If you saw the thumbnail and you thought to yourself, ah man, this guy's just gonna make a bunch of Amber Heard jokes through the whole episode, all I have to say to that is, objection, hearsay.
Move this man!
Let me ask y'all a question. What do you think of when you think of the MCU? In general, most people would associate the MCU with success. I mean, we're talking over a decade's worth of critically acclaimed movies. Audience retention is at an all-time high. People can't get enough of Marvel. Throw them a TV show every now and then and they're just as happy as ever. Most of them. But then let's cross over to the other side, to DC. What is it about DC that seems to get the most hate from fans? I would say a lot of DC films have been critically panned, controversial, or they just straight up struggled to get their footing. And today, I'm going to be digging into 3 topics that I believe caused the downfall of DC movies. For each of these 3 topics, I'm going to have a movie or a situation tied to that topic that I believe best describes the mistakes made by DC, while at the end, giving you guys a hopeful conclusion on how DC can salvage their future. Number 1 is poor creative choices. And the movie that I think best describes this is Green Lantern from 2011. This was the first domino to fall in the live action DC movies. Personally, I thought the movie was entertaining when it first came out, but I think on rewatch and after doing a couple of deep dives and analysis into the behind the scenes stuff, I can see now that it was an absolute dumpster fire from the start. And why is that? I mean, first of all, you start out the gate with the production being absolutely terrible. Rumors were that they didn't even finish the script. Like, they were still halfway through the script when they were filming it, so they're just figuring things out as they go. And when there's no clear, concise story from point A to point B, that's already a movie that's doomed from the start. I mean, think about it. This had a solid premise. It's really hard to mess up Green Lantern. I mean, they had likable actors, they had a massive budget. And again, Green Lantern is a property that is well loved by fans all over the world. But you gotta think, they had a merry-go-round of directors. It seemed like nobody really wanted their take to be brought to the main screen. DC themselves just seemed very disinterested in having a clear, concise story. Granted, this is still back when DC and Marvel movies were still trying to reclaim their footing after the brief lull we had in the early 2000s, but there was just too much going on with this movie. They had an extreme over-reliance on CGI. The studio, in a way, got lazy, and they just slapped CGI on everything when it's amazing what some actual practical effects will do for your film. You combine that with a bunch of bickering executives who all thought they knew better than the other person, and that just led to a movie that felt like there's 5 different hands in the pot, and they're all trying to vie for attention, and they're all trying to vie for their cut of the movie. And it just felt so bloated and so just ugly. It has redeemable qualities. I mean, there are parts of this film that you can really see where they could make an incredible film. But all in all, because of these poor creative decisions, it really doomed the movie from the start. And that started, in my opinion, the domino effect that led into hasty movies, quick productions, complete disregard of the fans and what they expect to see in a DC movie. Which leads me over into my number 2, which is playing catch up with Marvel. Now, DC has always been seen as the little brother to Marvel. Marvel basically was there first with their MCU. Marvel was there first with all of their massive, incredible movies. And of course, DC is like, well, I want a piece of that. You know, you guys are cranking out billion-dollar movies. I want some of that too. And in my opinion, no movie was as egregious when it came to trying to match up with Marvel than Joss Whedon's Justice League. I'm just going to go ahead and say that this has nothing to do with Zack Snyder's vision. I believe that he really had a great story buried underneath, but unfortunately with the tragic passing of his daughter during filming, he had to step away, which led to Joss Whedon being brought in by DC. And this is the perfect example of DC panicking. The biggest difference between DC and Marvel is Marvel was actually having an end game. No pun intended, where Marvel had these massive storylines all leading to a huge payoff that fans could ride along with for years and years and get emotionally invested in these characters, to where when you get that payoff of seeing hundreds of heroes on the screen together to face off against Thanos, it feels deserved, it feels earned. Granted, if this was any other situation, it probably would have gotten panned for its bloatedness. You know, Endgame was a almost 3.5, 4-hour movie, but usually people tend to look the other way because of how monumental it is. DC films had no right to stake claim to that. You know, DC tried to do their DCEU and they started right out with Batman v Superman, which to me was a very cheap way of trying to force these two characters together and create a conflict. But I know I'm supposed to be talking about Justice League, so let's pivot back towards that. With what we got, we already have horribly undercooked characters that were just now presented to us. You've got Cyborg, you've got The Flash. These are brand new actors playing brand new characters or brand new portrayals on the screen. And we haven't had so much of a single movie before this that gave us even an ounce of investment in these characters. Batman v Superman doesn't count because that was basically just a little Google Drive video, 30-second clip of them. Does not count at all. And this is just a perfect example of DC rushing things and saying, all right, we got to get to this big team up movie because team up movies equal money. Money equals more money for us. So at the end of the day, let's make that as quick as we can. And their thought process behind bringing in Joss Whedon was Joss Whedon had previously worked on the Avengers, both 1 and 2, 1 and Age of Ultron. And they were like, wow, okay, he knows how to work with a bunch of superheroes and give them a purpose. And, you know, he can make, you know who am I kidding? They saw Joss Whedon make billion-dollar movies and they were just like, all right, you do that, but here, you come with us and you make $1 billion. And I think that was what the expectation was. They didn't care about story. They didn't care about characters. They just wanted what Marvel had, and they wanted to do it without having to put in any of the elbow grease. Essentially, DC is ignoring a whole character's arc times like 3, because you've got the Flash's story arcs, you've got Cyborg's story arcs, you've got Wonder Woman, Batman, and Superman, who are pre-established characters, I'll give you that, but there's still so much to be discovered with them. And Zack Snyder did his best in the Snyder Cut to give them that backstory that I felt was a whole lot better than what we got with the Justice League version. But still, it's too much and it's too early. If we just had one solo movie each, I wouldn't be talking about this nearly as bad, because then we would at least have something to be invested in. But with what we got, it's just lazy. Like, do better. We're talking rewrites. We're talking about forced jokes.
Yeah. Oh, something's definitely bleeding.
A complete 180 shift from what Zack Snyder had envisioned for the movie. Zack Snyder wanted to make 3 Justice League movies, and he had a very concise plan for it. But DC was like, is that gonna make me money right now? I don't want it. And completely nixed it just because they were afraid of whether or not they were gonna actually make some more money in the future. But the end result of that travesty of a movie led to it being bombed by critics and fans alike. I remember walking out of the movie theater seeing Justice League for the first time on opening night, and I was just disgusted. It just felt horrible. It leaves you with this bad taste in your mouth where it's like, is this really what our characters that we've grown up with have come to? It's just this cheap, you got Batman cracking jokes on the sidelines.
Well, I knew you didn't bring me back because you like me.
I don't. Not.
You've got Superman's CGI mustache.
Look at this dude. Wait till you see the. No, 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 no.
Just screams unfinished, ill-prepared, and thrown together hastily, which honestly segues perfectly into my final point. Number 3 is executive studio interference. This is really the be-all end-all that has ruined a lot of the DC movies that people hate. You're talking Batman vs. Superman, Suicide Squad, not the second one, the first Suicide Squad, Justice League, Wonder Woman 1989. I'm sorry, 1984. Was it 1984 or 1989? Regardless, it begins and ends with Warner Brothers and the executives over at DC. It begins and ends with their interference. All they see is profit. They really don't care how we get there. They just see money. They will gladly bypass years and years worth of movies and character development just to get to that one sweet, sweet, sweet team up movie that brings in the most money. I think they forget that you can't build up and have a blockbuster payoff and have no payoff. The way I see it, you have to earn your success. You can't buy it. Studio interference and corporate greed just leads to absolute terrible portrayals of movies that have potential to be really good. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that these movies are bad concepts. Who wouldn't want to see the Justice League team up in live action? I know I would love to, but granted, I want to see it done right. I want to be fully invested in the story, which makes the payoff so much better. Also, just to be slightly controversial, can I be a little controversial? DC's rushed mindset has led to some terrible casting choices that's really starting to surface and bite them in the butt. Just some recent examples, only recent examples. Amber Heard. I'm not going to go into my thoughts on the Amber Heard Johnny Depp trial because I believe what's already been said has been said. Regardless of how you believe the trial should have gone or how it should have ended, I believe the facts are the facts. And now that the resolution has been passed, I believe that was the right decision. But when you have the actual head honcho over at DC testifying in the Amber Heard trial, and he's basically admitting that they were trying to find ways to get rid of her after Aquaman 1 because of her lack of chemistry with Jason Momoa, it's just a perfect example of these studio executives just scrambling, trying to find something and making poor decisions like throwing Amber Heard in with Jason Momoa without even thinking about the chemistry. And that was one of the biggest things about Aquaman 1 that people had problems with, is that it did not have much chemistry between the two leading actors. I really do believe that DC needs to cut ties with Amber Heard, and it looks like they're starting to do that. Although me personally, I think it's too little too late, because you had tons of opportunities before this trial commenced to be able to get her out of the film. You could have rewritten her. You could have recasted her. You could have done so many different things. Well, you've got Johnny Depp completely blackballed from Hollywood, but yet she still gets to hold on to this role that honestly could have gone to a more deserving actress. And now we have to have an Aquaman 2, which regardless of if it's good or not, you still have a whole plot line that has to be removed just because of this Amber Heard situation. But anyway, props to DC for finally realizing the error of their ways and making the right decision to cut her completely out of Aquaman 2. I do appreciate that. Another recent example is Ezra Miller. When I first heard that Ezra Miller was going to be the Flash, I didn't know much about the actor, but I did see some potential. He had that bright-eyed excitement that a young Barry Allen would have. And with some pretty big DC movies under his belt, he was supposed to be basically given the keys to the DCEU. And in this upcoming Flashpoint movie, his whole thing was he is going to be the driving force behind Flashpoint, which if you're not familiar with Flashpoint, it's basically going to be this massive multiversal shindig. I wouldn't say it's quite on Doctor Strange level. It might even, the way they were talking about it was supposed to be greater than Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness. But regardless, the point being, he was given the keys to the DCEU. However, upon further digging, this actor has a history of outbursts and violence. He was arrested, twice in 1 month when he was vacationing in Hawaii?
Tell me your name and your badge number.
I'm being arrested for disorderly conduct.
Yeah.
Claim my 9th Amendment rights to not be unlawfully persecuted for a crime of no designation. I'm not transgender, non-binary. I don't want to be searched by a man. I'm transgender, non-binary, and I don't want to be searched by a man. I claim my 4th Amendment rights.
He's got tons of abuse claims. A lot of people have said that he is just a terrible person. And you got to think DC had to have done their homework. If you can find mean tweets written by James Gunn back in 2011 and get him kicked out of doing Guardians of the Galaxy for Marvel, I'm sure you can do some research on DC's end on the actors and directors that you bring in. They had to have known these things, but they just went ahead with it. And now this has led to the national outcry with DC fans rising up and going, hey, we don't want him to be the face of the DCEU anymore. We don't want him to be the Flash. Replace him with Grant Gustin. Replace him with, Dylan O'Brien or something like that? Anybody other than him. And now that you've already fully shot the movie, you've spent the millions of dollars, hundreds of $1 millions to get this movie made, and now you're starting to see the fruits of Ezra Miller's actions, it's too late. You're going to either have to shelf the whole movie or release the movie to an audience who probably will be boycotting the movie. I'm not going to say all of the DC fans will, but if they're going to treat it the same way they treat Amber Heard's situation, then there's going to be a lot of fans who won't go to see the Flash movie just because of Ezra Miller's actions. And this is going to hurt your bottom line. That's all you care about, DC, right? All you care about is the bottom line. Well, this is going to hurt it. I'm sorry. I've been extremely negative so far, so I'm going to go ahead and pivot into the hope for DC. What can you do to fix this? And I believe it's super easy. To be honest, recently DC has really been making some great decisions. They've really found success in isolated movies and TV shows that don't have as strict of studio interference of them reaching around and forcing things to happen just because they have an agenda. You've got Joker, you've got the Suicide Squad, not Suicide Squad, the Batman, Peacemaker. Literally, Peacemaker is better than most of the stuff from the mid 2010s of DC, which leads to my point of give a director full creative control with some guidance, step back and watch the magic happen. Because that's what DC's done recently with a lot of these standalone movies, and they've been phenomenal. The blueprint is right there. Don't try to be like Marvel 2.0. Be your own studio. This is obviously your niche, so why not stick with it and dig deeper into that? Don't try to force a multiversal calamity. Focus on these isolated character dramas, these big character pieces where you can analyze these characters that we know and love and take them to a new level. Shout out to my coworker Eric, who came up with a great idea that DC could implement to bring alongside their fans, to hear their thoughts, to hear what they want to say, and potentially have their ideas influence the future of DC media. His idea was for DC to implement a fully functional fan survey with a list of topics and projects that fans can vote on to influence what they want to see in the future. One of the biggest things that fans complain about is they feel like their voices haven't been heard, and they feel like these big media properties are just moving on and leaving fans in the dust or barely listening to them. Granted, this doesn't need to be the only source of inspiration, but I do think it's a great way to get the fan excitement back on track. It really gives them a voice and it makes them feel like their opinion matters. And honestly, it kind of helps, because that really helps DC avoid the angry mobs on Twitter that trash a movie every time it comes out. So I mean, hey, you tell me. And the survey could be as simple as just a newsletter format. I mean, shoot, when they have these DC fandom events, fandom, because it's in a dome, use that exclusive fan time as a way to get these fans involved. You know, make it a part of a newsletter where DC subscribers, of course, if they pay a specific amount of money, you know, one of those $5.99 a month gigs, they can answer specific survey questions pertaining to the future of the DCEU and where they would like things to go. It's something that I'm sure DC's probably considered in the past, and they've messed around with it a couple of times. I mean, just a random one that comes to mind is when they, back in the, was it the 80s or was it the 90s when, or was it the 70s? I don't know. When in the Death of the Family, I believe it was a Death in the Family, the Joker captured Robin, and the publishing company sent out personal things for fans to send back of, do you think Jason should live or die? And once they sent in their reactions, they took that and that created the final story. In that case, they chose for Jason to die, which ended up leading to him becoming the Red Hood. But again, that's a massive, massive, massive thing to let fans be a part of. And it makes you feel like you have a part in that. You have a say. And so I really liked when Eric brought that up, because in my opinion, that's a great way to at least start and get fans at least somewhat hyped. That being said, I want to turn it over to y'all. Let me know in the comments what you would do to fix the problems that DC has. Or let me know if you think things are perfect and they shouldn't be changed. Again, it's your opinion. I would love to hear it. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a like. Share it with your friends. Let's get a conversation going. I'd love to be able to have it back and forth with you guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate you guys taking some time out to listen to me. Have a great day.